All right, y'all. Welcome to the channel. Just want to send a shout out to all the subscribers and our followers that we have. I want to say thank you so much for joining and following and supporting the channel. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you smack that subscribe button. Or if you haven't followed yet, make sure you hit the follow button. And like the video so we can get out there more. We've been trying to get more promotion to get out there more and more and more. That's what keeps us rolling. The views and the likes. Just trying to get out there more. That's all. Just trying to get more publicity and try to speak the truth and get real news to y'all and have some fun on the way, But further ado, I got some big news out of the World Economic Reform. It's you have to listen to what Rota tells the Poland president.
Zone from the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. I'm Sarah Kelly. We're here with the NATO Secretary General, Mark Rutte, the President of Poland, Karol Nawrocki,
Good morning.
the President of Finland, Alexander Stubb, the President of the European Investment Bank, Nadia Calvino, and the CEO of Sanofi, Paul Hudson. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. Now, this question, can Europe defend itself, has really been thrust into the forefront as Donald Trump threatens allies over Greenland. As we wait for Trump to deliver a statement in just a few hours, there has been so much discussion in the past few days, not only about the potential for a trade war with Europe, but also even the collapse of the NATO alliance itself. And with that, Mr. Secretary General, I'd like to begin with you, because with the U.S. still a guarantor of European security, are European NATO allies hostage to Trump's demands?
Well, listen, NATO, since 1949, is the transatlantic alliance. And I think we have to be very careful in considering the fact that the US and Canada are not only in NATO to prevent the historic mistake the US made, in their own view, after the First World War, which was retreating from the world stage, and then the long arm of history reaching out to the US again in the Second World War, not wanting to repeat that mistake. They are in NATO because NATO is crucial not only for the defense of Europe, but also for the defense of the United States. For the United States to stay safe, you need a safe Arctic, a safe Atlantic, and a safe Europe. And all the military and all the politicians in the US know this, and we really have to be mindful of this. So when the question is Europe safe? Yes, Europe is safe because of what Europe is doing itself within NATO, but also because we have that strong transatlantic relationship.
But we know the history, we know the stakes. Let's talk about the current dynamics. And I'd like to ask you, for perhaps a bit of reflection here, did you ever think that you would ever see one NATO member threaten the territorial integrity of another? I mean, you have now the Prime Minister of Greenland telling his public an attack cannot be ruled out.
Listen, my role as NATO Secretary General, when there is tension within the alliance, it has been there in the past between Greece and Turkey, there have been other moments when there was tension, then my predecessors always took the view that they should not comment on that in public. That's impossible. Why is that impossible? Because as soon as I do, I cannot any longer help to somehow, with others, of course, not me, only myself, but of course with other leaders, to basically diffuse the tension, to de-escalate, etc. That's why you will not hear me comment. You can be assured that I'm working on this issue behind the scenes, but I cannot do that in public. Sorry, no comments from me on Greenland.
Well, sometimes behind the scenes comments do become public in various ways, as we've seen in the past few days.
That's true.
You talked about security in the Arctic. No matter how you come out of this Greenland row, I mean, it really seems as if the dynamics have fundamentally changed within NATO. You have Macron saying yesterday, we are shifting to a world without rules. Hasn't all of this fundamentally damaged the foundations of NATO, the shared trust the shared values.
Of course, I see that there are these tensions at the moment. There's no doubt. Again, I'm not going to comment on that, but I can assure you the only way to deal with that is, in the end, thoughtful diplomacy. So statements from me will not add anything here. And when it comes to the Arctic, I think President Trump is right. Other leaders in NATO are right. We need to defend the Arctic. We know that these sea lanes are opening up. We know that China and Russia are increasingly active in the Arctic. There are 8 countries bordering on the Arctic. 7 are a member of NATO. That's Finland and Sweden and Norway and Denmark, Iceland, Canada and the US. And there's only 1 country bordering on the Arctic outside NATO, and that's Russia. And I would argue there is a 9th country, which is China, which is increasingly active in the Arctic region. So President Trump and other leaders are right. We have to do more there. We have to protect the Arctic against Russian and Chinese influence. And that's exactly what NATO ambassadors decided to do in September. We are working on that, making sure that collectively will we defend the Arctic region.
I'd like to turn to Poland now. You have traditionally been furiously pro-American in terms of, efforts to keep them on board as a guarantor of security in Europe. You've turned the term to the Greenland dispute, and again, this was a comment that I understand you made last week, a matter between the Danish Prime Minister and President Trump. Just briefly, do you still stand by that after everything that you've seen in the past days and weeks?
Of course, United States of America are the most important Polish bilateral ally, but we also appreciate a lot NATO. We are the part of NATO, and we feel responsible for NATO. This is the biggest alliance in the history of 20th century. I think, like Mark Rutte, the NATO is stable, NATO is solidifying, but we of course recognize some problems about the Greenland. And I'm looking at the problem of Greenland from the strategic side. We have Chinese, we have Russian. We feel in Poland Russian threat for 3 centuries even, and we are.
I'm sorry, I think it's the Polish president. Or, I'm sorry, Finland president. You gotta hear it.
Understand it at all in eastern flank of NATO. And if we consider, ladies and gentlemen, that global GDP is consisted of 15% of
right.
European Union involvement and 15% of United States of America involvement, but according in terms of security, United States of America paying 65% for NATO and Europeans 35%, we have to consider what Donald Trump would like to say about the security, because he's responsible for security of the world as the leader, and we would like to support.
Do you really think you can stay out of this? Do you really think you can stay out of this row? Do you really think that, isn't this the moment right now for solidarity in Europe? Isn't this key to a united and a strong response?
There is the necessity of solidarity in Europe, but there is also the necessity of building the good transatlantic relations. And I think that transatlantic relations are very important. We know in Europe, Alex, all my European friends knows how many mistakes had Europe done after and before 2022, and Donald Trump tried to convince our European partners that we have to solidify, and his voice is very important because of the financial, because of the strategic, geopolitical point of view. I, of course, hope that it will be solved thanks to all partners on the diplomatic way, and
How far are you willing to go to have good transatlantic relations? Does that mean giving the Americans Greenland, selling the Americans Greenland? How far should European allies go if the Americans do move on Greenland?
We have 10,000 American soldiers in Poland. We buy American military equipment, which is the best on the world. South Korean is also very good, but American is...
and Finnish tanks you buy.
And Finnish tanks.
A little bit of a commercial break here, yeah.
We have the biggest army in East Central Europe. Poland increased the of GDP for military service almost to 5%. So we feel responsible for Poland. I believe in Polish soldiers, in our alliance, but United States of America, for all eastern flank of NATO, are very important ally. And those relations are also based on our history. This is the relation of values. We have common independence heroes in Poland and in United States of America. So I think that we should solve this problem on diplomatic way.
Okay.
Of course, I appreciate Denmark voice is natural. It's our partner, Denmark. But I'm looking at the Greenland as strategic point in the geopolitical issue between free world, democracy's world, independence, and with Russia.
President Stubb, I'd like to turn to you now because you, along with the Secretary General, have been known as the Trump.
All right, so this is where it starts getting funny. Now, y'all drop a chat on what y'all think about this situation.
Whisperers. You know, now you're on the list being targeted for sanctions. You recently joined the NATO alliance. Is it just in time for its dissolution?
No, not at all. I think actually we're in the process of creating a stronger NATO than we have seen since the end of the Cold War. This is pretty much NATO 3.0. Remember that after the end of the Cold War, a lot of NATO countries actually dropped their guard in terms of defense expenditure and capabilities, whereas a country like Finland, which stayed outside, didn't do that. We still have conscription. And speaking of the Arctic, we have the biggest military force of Arctic capabilities in the alliance. We have 1 million individuals, men and women, who've had their military training in Arctic conditions. So I think we're strengthening actually the alliance as we speak. And remember that we've doubled the border of the alliance with NATO, with Finland joining and then with Sweden joining. So I think we're creating a new NATO where Europe takes more responsibility.
So then take us to the diplomatic efforts and how you are trying to do that. Because, you know, we saw over the weekend, you along with your Norwegian counterpart sent this message to Trump calling for a de-escalation of tension. He responded quite quickly saying he's no longer purely thinking of peace. Who or what can diffuse the tensions over Greenland, if not you?
Thank you, Alex.
Anytime. You want to take this one, Mark? No, I mean, listen, we're now in a phase in the transatlantic relationship, and you'll know that I'm pro-European, pro-American, and therefore by default pro-transatlantic. We are in a relationship which is much more direct than it's ever actually been. I mean, the communication channels that we have directly with the president and with the administration are actually good and solid. And then, you know, at times there are curveballs flying in different types of directions. We try to catch them and we try to solve them. You know, you have two schools of thought here on Greenland. One is to de-escalate, and the other one is to escalate to de-escalate. And I think at the end of the day, we'll find an off-ramp on this. I'll make two final remarks. If someone would have told me in Washington, D.C., for the 75th anniversary of the alliance, that we're going to increase our defense expenditure next year to 5%, I would have said, you have no clue about international relations or seek help with a doctor. We did. And I think what we need as an off-ramp now is some kind of a process whereby we start working on a real problem, which is Arctic security. Unfortunately, as Mark said, we have 7 countries, Arctic countries, one of them with a huge military that can help to deal with this. So let's start working towards a process which leads us to a NATO summit in Ankara where we actually strengthen Arctic security within the alliance. So this is what we're working at.
Okay. Nadia, I'd like to ask you about the money. This is a key point also to can Europe defend itself, which is the topic that we're discussing today. The EU is freeing up hundreds of billions of euros to ramp up defense spending. You're part of that. You have quickly ramped up your capacity to mobilize capital for defense investment. This is something that's new for your bank, we also have to mention. How much do you see your future being defense and defense-related projects?
It's been a sea change in the last 2 years, and we were just discussing with Alex that in the past was also working at the European Investment Bank, how things have changed, you know, in the last couple of years, in that we have extended the scope of projects we are financing, and we have reached this magical number of 5% of our financing inside the Union this year, last year, sorry, in 2025. So that outperformed our targets. We were hoping to reach that level this year in 26, but we already did in 25. We have a very robust pipeline of flagship projects, a number of them in Poland, by the way. So that's European solidarity, actually supporting the defense of Poland on the eastern flank. And so my answer would undoubtedly be, yes, Europe can defend itself.
Yeah. Paul, I'd like to turn to you also with that, because there's a role for the private sector as well here. NATO is treating medical preparedness as part of collective defense. You have many of your capabilities anchored in Europe. Does what you are hearing about European defense in the past days make you feel secure as a business person? And how do you see the private sector's role?
You know, the subjects that are being discussed are obviously extremely important, and I trust in the process that people will get to the right conclusion. I think health is unrecognized as the severity of what could happen if health sovereignty, innovation sovereignty, protecting populations is deprioritized. I think NATO have made that point about making sure that people can get medicines they need in difficult times. I think in COVID, my own personal experience was that I was getting calls from heads of state, ministers of health saying, we need medicines, give them to us, don't give them to anybody else. It quickly delineated and fragmented, and it worried us greatly, given the importance of trying to work together to find some unity to make sure that we do things for Europe. Now, Sanofi is more than 50% of our manufacturing and R&D spend is in Europe. And so we believe that we're one of the few companies that has that resiliency to be able to provide. But there is a real moment for Europe. Perhaps it's not on the scale of this conversation and Greenland, but it is a real moment. Europe has long time been one of the great discoverers of medicines, the great providers. Pressure from Donald Trump on the price that is paid for medicines in Europe has put it into focus. And for the first time, China and the US publish more clinical papers, win more Nobel Prizes, discover more medicines than Europe. And Europe's slipping behind. And it's a moment. It is still in control. While I listen to this conversation, sometimes I worry that there's a lot to be managed, escalate to de-escalate. Europe, in particular, has health innovation and health sovereignty in the palm of its hand. And if it chooses to step forward, it can protect, it can innovate, and it can compete. This is a moment not to be squandered.
I'd just like to add something and kind of reset us a little bit. We're talking about can Europe defend itself, and something that's really interesting is that we have not said the word Russia or Ukraine, I think, so far in this conversation. And it just goes to show you actually how the conversation has changed. But I'd like to really take it back to now defense capabilities, the spending that also we were talking about. Polish president, you know, we know that you're already projecting to get to 5% of GDP this year. You're doing all of this spending, hundreds of billions of euros being ramped up, but to still be dependent on the Americans. And I'm talking about key things. So air transport, strategic command and control systems, high-end intelligence. Do you get the sense, especially after the events of the past days, that Europeans are really in a state of urgency to quickly ramp up the ability to handle a protracted conflict without the U.S.? What is the plan B if diplomacy fails?
I understand your question, but I would like to assure you that our Polish independence and sovereignty is very strong. The first, I believe in Polish soldiers, of course, in our history and our readiness to fight with everyone who would like to invade Poland. So we felt a strong country on the eastern flank of NATO. But we also believe in diplomacy. It's natural in NATO, our cooperation with NATO, with European Union. Diplomacy is, of course, the part of the security guarantees. But what we can do as the Republic of Poland, and our friends also doing this, I see the President increase the budget for military service, and it was the great achievement of Europe. And what have happened? In Hague, Donald Trump pushed Europeans to increase the military service cost and GDP. Also, European Union need Donald Trump to be pushed by him to increase this budget. It's not good way, and many countries inside Europe still haven't done this. So, you know, we have big problem about the feeling for our security and responsibility for secure European Union.
I'm going to get to you in just a second, Mr. Secretary General, of course. But
can I
President Stubb, I'd like to ask you first. Do you see this sense of urgency for a Plan B among your European partners? Is there the need for that? And who should lead the charge? Because, I mean, it's a bit unfair. We're sitting here on the panel with Finland and Poland. You know, you are really doing a lot when it comes to defense, especially Finland. You have this comprehensive approach to defense in your country. Are your partners, are they experiencing the urgency? Who needs to come up with the Plan B and lead the charge?
Well, I mean, two answers. First is a direct answer to the question of this panel: can Europe defend itself? My answer is unequivocally yes.
Without the Americans?
Without the Americans, I mean...
How?
Liz, well, look...
But you're relying on them for these...
Now, this is where it's funny. Mark Rutte shuts him down in a heartbeat.
Key elements. How would you do it at scale and at duration and at intensity?
With an assumption that the United States would cut off completely any kind of work.
Yeah.
Well, if we look at the defense composure of Europe by and large, and a country like Finland, so how do we do it? We have conscription. 1 million have done it. We can mobilize 280,000 soldiers within weeks. We have 62 F-18s. Your next question is going to be, do they fly without Americans? No, they don't. But do we trust that they will continue to fly because it's in the interest of America to do so? Yes. We just bought 64 F-35s. We have the biggest artillery in Europe together with Poland. We have long-range missiles, land, sea, and air. We don't have these because we're worried about Stockholm, right? So, the bottom line is that if you ask me the question that can the Finnish military defend itself against a Russian attack, the whole defense posture of the way in which you do it, yes, we can. But then the second question, which you were alluding to, I think we also have to understand that you fight wars on the battlefield, but you win them at home. And that means that all of us need to focus more on comprehensive security. The civilian side of things. That's why we have civilian shelters for 4.4 million Finns. That's why we have a security of supply where we don't get into any kind of trouble with food shortages, energy shortages, or electricity grids, because we've got this. And this is the, I think, capability that a lot of European states need to do. My absolutely final point. It's all good and well to talk about percentages, but just remember, you don't fight wars with percentages. You fight wars with capabilities, and those you just need to have in stock.
Do European NATO allies need to think more about having capabilities that overlap with the United States?
Well, this is
to hedge their bets.
The NATO is constructed like this, that the US, Canada, and the European NATO allies were completely integrated. It doesn't mean that there is the US coming to the rescue of Europe or Europe coming to the rescue of the United States. We are working completely integrated. And for the protection of both the US and Europe, it's crucial that NATO is there.
Okay, so and I didn't see it part there, but anyways, the news reporter is literally trying to get them to split apart. If you understand what she's trying to do there. She's trying to make them say something that's going to start an altercation between the alliance. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and say what he said. He said that something about could he withstand attack from the United States or something like that, and the Finland president said yeah, and then Mark Rutte said absolutely not true, absolutely not true. He said. Um, I'll have to find it and see where it's at. I thought this was the right video. I apologize. I'll pop back on here in a minute and stay tuned.
there was one big irritant on the American side with NATO. And the big irritant since Eisenhower was that they were spending, the US was spending, so much more than Europe was spending. Even today, the US is spending 3.5% of GDP on core defense. We are spending in Europe average 2% of defense. And here's my question.
Join me now, right on set. Great.